Well, doesn't need a lot of introduction, that piece, does it? It's been played and heard a million times. It's the Maple Leaf Rag, Scott Joplin, as performed by Roy Eaton. Well, tomorrow we're not celebrating, we're paying homage. Tomorrow, April 1st, is the 100th anniversary of the death of Scott Joplin. So I wasn't aware of this the other day, and I got an email from a listener and a great lover of the music of Scott Joplin, Larry Strawn. Larry Strawn was in our studios a couple years back. He's the leader of an orchestra in town called the Chamber Orchestra Musaic, which is a nonprofit organization promoting the cultural mosaic of Winnipeg through classical music. So he sent me this email. He just wanted to let me know that Scott Joplin it's coming up upon the anniversary of his death, 100th anniversary of his death, and we'd be interested in playing some of his music. And right away I jumped on it, and I emailed Larry back and I said, absolutely, I'd be interested. And I said, well, why don't you come by and chat a little bit about it, Scott Joplin and the music, and in particular Treemonisha. So Larry came by this morning. He's been here before. Again, happy to have you back in the studio, Larry Strawn.
Thanks, Michael.
A pleasure to have you here, and first of all, I love the music of Scott Joplin. I've always loved Scott Joplin. There's something about it that I never get tired of hearing. I could listen to the rags and stuff all over. Now, I played that particular rag, and I played a rag because that's what he's known for. Mm-hmm. Scott Joplin is known for his rags. So we're going to chat about Scott Joplin, not about his rags. How about that? But before we do that, tell us a little bit about your background in music and what's your passion in classical music?
Well, my passion is mostly for neglected composers. Probably starting around my third year doing my Bachelor of Music at U of M, I just decided to start exploring composers outside the mainstream. Mm-hmm. And for example, I was doing a lot of accompanying at that time, a lot of Schubert and Milforet, and let's look at some art songs.
Yawn.
Yeah, well, no, the beautiful. Yeah, talking about the great works of that repertoire. But then I started exploring other ones, and I remember I did some songs by an early Canadian composer, Clarence Lucas, from the 19th century. Mm-hmm. We performed a couple of those. I kind of created a whole song cycle around the songs of Cécile Chaminade, the 19th century French female composer. Mm-hmm. Absolutely gorgeous songs, repertoire. And there was a recording I made by Deutsche Grammophon a number of years ago on that, so I highly... people should go after that recording. Beautiful songs there. Mm-hmm. And then it led me to, of course, I'm Caribbean Canadian, and my parents from Grenada. Mm-hmm. I was born here, and of course, with my background, I decided to, what about black composers?
Yeah.
What's out there? And of course, Scott Joplin was the first one that sort of popped out of my mind because, of course, of his piano rags, and that was an easy vehicle to, since I was a piano major, playing piano, I decided to explore the rags, and I started performing a couple of those, and somehow along the line it led me to Treemonisha. There was a vinyl recording in the library at the time that I discovered, and I was just fascinated. I can't remember the moment when I realized that Scott Joplin had written an opera, but it was like it was so light bulb just flashed in my mind, and I had to listen to it, and I was just floored by this. And I've always been interested in learning more about it. When I was doing my master's in Winchester, Virginia at Shenandoah Conservatory, I decided to do a project on Joplin stage works, focusing solely on his desire to write for the stage. And that took me to seeing an actual performance of Treemonisha, scenes of Treemonisha, mm-hmm. In Roanoke, Virginia, with Opera Roanoke, and I got a chance to do that. T.J. Anderson. Actually, I had T.J. Anderson is a African American composer, esteemed. He's in his 80s right now. He was a person who did the first orchestration when it was performed in the early 70s of Joplin, because the orchestrations are lost. Unfortunately, we know that Joplin had made orchestrations, was at work at them, but those are long gone. We don't know what happened to them. So T.J. Anderson made his version of it, and so I got into communication with him. And I remember when I first met him, he was. I said, "Hi, I'm Larry Strachan," and he said, "You're Larry Strachan? Oh, I thought you was white. That was for." I guess I didn't have the southern accent. Yeah, I told. But we met then, and I've since with Chamber Orchestra Musaic, we performed a couple of T.J. Anderson's works, notably his. He wrote a work based on about Malcolm X, and in homage of Malcolm X, and that was for mezzo soprano and chamber orchestra. So that's one of the pieces we've done. So, in memoriam, Malcolm X is the actual title. So that's and then this new recording. The latest recording of Treemonisha came out in 2011. Rick Benjamin and his ragtime orchestra,
Paragon
Ragtime Orchestra, where he sort of does his own 11 ensemble pit band version, because that early recording of Treemonisha from the 70s by Gunther Schuller, for the Atlanta recording from the 70s for Deutsche Grammophon, this was for a full symphonic orchestra. And although it was a great way to hear the work, to actually hear it, it really wasn't an overblown, I guess Gunther Schuller wanted to, Rick Benjamin in his notes, he sort of thinks that at the time there was a need to try and
make it sound a bit more authentic.
Yeah, maybe, there may have been a bit of in his mind of like the Porgy and Bess type of, we have to sort of bring Joplin into that realm, into that, when it's really sort of not what Joplin, what Rick Benjamin had intended, because he worked with the pit bands of the era, so much smaller ensemble, much more intimate. So and also what Gunther Schuller in his orchestration also spiced up some of the harmonies as well.
Okay, took a few liberties.
Which is.
Joplin was rolling over.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me take you back. I just want to mention that Larry Strachan is in the studio. He is a local conductor with the Chamber Orchestra Musaic, and very passionate about this music. We're talking about Joplin because Joplin tomorrow is the 100th anniversary of his death. So I'll take you back to the beginning of. Can you tell that he's passionate, listeners? Can you tell he's passionate about this stuff? Let me take you back a couple steps. Now, you said your interest is in. What's known as neglected composers, and people think Scott Joplin's not really neglected. Everybody, we all know the rags. Like he is the what do they call him, the king of ragtime? Right. But really, the reality of it is Joplin is a neglected composer because he wrote this Treemonisha in 1911.
Yes.
Didn't get its real first staging until the 70s, and in fact, his music was neglected for 60 years or so before the 70s when it became quote unquote popularized during the film The Entertainer. Right.
Actually, the film, I'm trying to remember the name of that film, it was with Robert Redford.
The Sting. Sorry, The Sting. Yeah. Sorry. Right. Yes. The Sting. So
where The Entertainer was one of the.
He is literally a neglected composer. For so many years, people didn't even know about his music until it became popularized in The Sting. And this particular opera, which as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, tomorrow. On my show, The Wide World of Classical Music, I'm playing, it's a 3-act opera.
Yes.
I'm playing in its entirety the first 2 acts tomorrow between 4 and 5. Then the next weekend, I'll play Act 3, again, between 4 and 5 o'clock. So he is a neglected composer, and this work in particular just collected dust.
Totally.
Forgotten about. Nobody knew about it until it was rediscovered and then brought to life again in the back in, 1974, I think, 1974 or so.
Performance.
When it had its first performance. So let's tell us a little bit about maybe the synopsis of the opera. Let's talk a little bit about what this opera is all about.
Well, the fascinating thing about this opera, it's, the story, Joplin also wrote the libretto. He was not a trained librettist, so the story is a little clumsy, but the fascinating thing about the opera is that the most important thing about it is that it's sort of like a compendium of his life. It's so everything in the opera is sort of what Joplin went through, and what he aspires for his race to be as well. So we have the story of a young orphan girl from a plantation, and this is around the time, maybe just a few years after emancipation. Joplin himself was born just a number of years after emancipation, so it's one of the first generation of born free slaves. I mean, of course, we know with after emancipation, slave, the
free is a very loose form of the word.
Loose form of freedom, right? So this orphan girl is raised by Manisha and Ned. She discovers later that
she's adopted.
That
right?
she's adopted.
Yeah.
This community is sort of growing up in an era where superstition and voodoo practices sort of prevail. And what Manisha was educated by a white lady in the community, so she's probably the only one in the community that, like Joplin, also in a way
had a classical training,
background, and as well, and so
tells her story.
She's the only one that has this kind of formal education in the community, and she's trying to rid the community of this type of superstitions and voodoo type practices. She's eventually kidnapped by this clan that that's her livelihood, because she's messing with our livelihood. Trying to we're trying to sell these bags of luck and whatnot, and she's trying to tell people not to buy into that. And so she gets kidnapped, and then she gets rescued, and at the end of it, she's made the leader of her community. So Joplin really sort of is one of the first to really have an opera where the sort of like an early female empowerment situation, and also trying to raise the level of education for his race at the same time. So
it's an amazing story. I mean, well ahead of its time.
Well ahead of its time, yeah.
Probably as a result, that's why it was shelved. I imagine that's part of the reason why it was.
Right.
It was too early.
It was definitely too early for.
He was well ahead of his time. It's too early, and the audiences weren't quite ready.
They weren't ready for that type of story.
To accept that story.
A story totally about a black community and about
empowerment, and
female empowerment.
Yeah.
About just the black community after slavery, and they weren't ready for that type of the mainstream.
And sadly, it's not really all that known today. In fact, I mean, how often is it performed? Not that often, I would think. I mean, especially here in Canada, I don't know if it's ever been, not that I can think of. And
I only know of one Canadian performance that was done by the Nathaniel Dett Choir in Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
That was a number of years ago. I don't know if it was a fully staged production or what arrangement or instrumentation they used, or what. But I do know they had done it. That's something. For me to jump in here, that I would like to bring to Winnipeg.
I was going to say, I see your next project in the works right now in your head anyway.
I would love to bring it to Winnipeg, and if there's anyone listening out there who'd like to contact me about it, and to sponsor, just give me a shout.
I think it'd be unbelievable. Well, I'll stand behind you on that one.
Okay.
You have my support. My pocketbook, empty at the moment, but we'll see what we can do.
I think the biggest thing that I always never thought I could ever do that was like, it has to be an all black cast.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I could do that in Winnipeg, but the more and more I thought about it, and I can do it. I do.
Yeah.
It is possible. I can do it. So.
Yep. I know Steve Kirby. You're going to contact Steve Kirby. He's going to help you out with that. Steve, if you're listening, or Annalisa, get on board with this one. So I'm going to, again, I'm in conversation with Larry Strawn. We're talking about the one particular opera by Joplin called Treemonisha. He only wrote 2 operas. This one in particular is more well known, called Treemonisha. I'm playing the whole thing on the next 2 Saturdays between 4 and 5 o'clock, Act 1 and Act 2. Tomorrow, between 4 and 5 o'clock, and then the following weekend I'll be playing Act 3 from it. So I want to give, we're going to bring Larry back in a second, but I want to give you a little idea of what it sounds like. So I'm going to play you the Act 1 Overture from Treemonisha right now. There you have it. Scott Joplin's Treemonisha, the Act 1 Overture, as performed by the Paragon Ragtime Orchestra, led by Rick Benjamin. There's some amazing singers in that as well. And I wanted to mention I'm going to be playing the complete Treemonisha opera. 2 acts tomorrow between 4 and 5. And then the following Saturday, I'll be playing Act 3 between 4 and 5. Larry Strachan, thank you. You know, I got to thank you for a couple of reasons. Number one, for giving us this CD. This is your own CD. I'll be giving this back to you at the end of the day, so you don't lose touch with it. And then for suggesting it as well.
Oh,
like
you're very welcome.
Really, thank you very much. We're always open to these kind of suggestions, and it's been a pleasure to chat with you again. And let us know when this is going to be staged.
Oh, I definitely will. I plan to be back here to talk about it for sure. And,
we were chatting off while that piece was playing. We were chatting. We've got it all set up. It's going to be staged. It's going to take a couple of years to put together, but we're going to work on it, and I'll be more than happy to help you out with that. So again, been in a conversation with Larry Strachan. He is the arranger, leader, orchestral conductor, all the above things with your Chamber Orchestra Musaic. So thanks again for that, Larry.
Yes.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Michael.
And we're going to take one more break for this hour, and then we'll check in with the news.